be together at this time virtually around the world. So tonight we have Nicole, and she's going to be teaching us a very special technique called the pop socket uh, beading. What would you call it, Nicole, please?
Well, what I'm doing right now is a wrapped edging, and it's something you can use on pop sockets, on flat beaded earrings, and everything else. But I've actually got everything all set up that I can show you from beginning to end how I make a pop socket.
Awesome. So what are the pieces that you are going to need for a pop socket?
Okay, I've got my little handy dandy list here. Now this is what I use. Okay, now I'm gonna need this, Melissa, because I'll be going through stuff.
Okay.
Now my most important item always whenever I'm beading is some sort of touchstone or mineral or whatever. And on this particular beading table, it happens to be a crystal Inukshuk.
Awesome.
I've always got somebody or something hanging out on my table. So that's what I always start off with.
Great.
Now, Melissa, can you pull this table closer to me here?
Yeah.
And take this, no, take the whole drawer off. Okay, now, what you will need is heavy Pellon. Okay, let's see here. And that's the thicker stuff. I like to have like the really, really heavy body for a pop socket. Like this stuff here is the thinner stuff. I use that on earrings. But
Okay.
this is what I use on pop sockets because I want it to have some, I want it to have some weight to it and everything else. It's meant to be held on to. I also use upholstery grade vinyl. I have this lying around because I also do machine embroidery. I get this from Fabricland and that, but you know, you can use whatever vinyl. And if your pop socket actually is not too large, you don't even need the vinyl backing. You can just glue the Pellon directly onto the pop socket. Oh fudge, where did my Melissa, can you quickly do a scrounge to find me the pop socket? I pulled out pop sockets and they're not here.
Mom, look on the couch over here.
They're there.
They're here somewhere
Never
because
lost.
I pulled out everything this afternoon. But the thing is that right now my living room looks like a bead factory exploded and then a tornado came through.
Not just
Okay, open that up for me.
Okay.
Okay, now I use a bunch of different glues. I use my Aleene's tacky glue.
Aleene's is a great glue.
And then I've got my good old E6000, and I always keep my pliers handy because the only thing that seems to really open it is pliers, because after you've used it once, it always glues.
Mom, I accidentally.
And then I don't care. I'm not reusing the bags that often. And then I use freight check, and I'll explain what I use the freight check for.
Okay.
Okay, and then you need a blank cell phone grip. I get mine from a local shop. I have no idea where she gets them. It's hard to find them cheap. I know a lot of people, they actually just buy actual pop sockets. Now here's me trying to open it up with one hand. But you open it all up, and there we go. And it's got the ones that she has, it has 3M tape on there, so I kind of trust that. But you'll need one of these. And then somewhere in this mess, unless you moved it, is my nail file. Did you steal my nail file, Melissa?
Yeah, I stole your nail. Ow.
Teenagers.
Well, I nicked my nail when I was shaving. So
I use a nail file. I use a metal nail file, and I use it to actually rough up, like put actual gouges into the top of the pop socket. So that way, because
to make it rough so that the glue will adhere to it. Okay, that's an interesting tip. So rough up The smooth
because
surface.
I'll rough it up, but I'll also put like actual gouges into it, and that way it's got better grip, especially when I'm gluing it up against the vinyl, because the
Okay.
vinyl is quite smooth. Okay, now what's next on my list here? Okay, let's just bring my drawer over here. You will need some sort of cabochon or gem for the middle,
Mm-hmm.
and that. You will need size 11 seed beads, which I have right there. Plastic rhinestone banding. This here is the larger stuff. And then over here, I've got the smaller stuff. I like the smaller stuff on pop sockets and earrings just because of the scale of it. That's a personal thing. And then either size 12 or size 11 sharps. It usually ends up being whatever one I've got sitting on my table or whatever needle I have sticking out of the side of my bead mat. I'm not sure yet. Okay, and then I use, for the actual beading, I use size B Nymo.
Size B. Okay.
Yes.
B is in boy.
I find the D a little bit too thick because quite frequently, like I don't use a 2-needle method. I go up, add 4, go back down, and then back through 2, if that was English-ish.
Oh, I totally understand. That's my language. Up 4,
Yeah. And then I go back.
add 2.
Well, I'll show you on one of the
When we get there.
Yeah. And then sometimes I will end up going back through all of the beads again. And so having the thread go through the same bead, 3 or 4 times, the D is just too thick with the size 11.
For sure.
Can I ask your size D Nymo thread? What is that equivalent to a pair the textile thread? Like I think there's like 30 and 33. I know, like,
Melissa,
yeah.
quickly go grab one of the cotton spools of thread off of the baker's rack beside Lucy. There will be a container that says quilting thread.
Oh, your quilting thread one. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Rita.
Hi, Justine.
Hi,
Okay.
LA. I can see the top of your head. Real quickly, we have 2 more guests. It's March 28, 2020. It's about 6:17 California time. Welcome, everybody. Hello, LA Robertson from Maine, and Rita from Iowa, and Maggie from Ontario. And tonight we have Nicole, and she's going to be showing us how to do the edging around the pop sockets. And she says you could use it for a lot of other items as well. So she has all the ingredients here, and you can watch it. And what I'm going to do is record this show, and we can watch it again later. So right now we've had the Palon that she uses, blue E6000, fray check. Of course, the cell phone pop socket. And let me introduce you to Nicole. Please take the floor and introduce yourself to our new guests, L.A. Robertson and Rita.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. First of all, yeah. Hello, I'm Nicole. And
Hello, Nicole.
I live in the southwestern corner of Manitoba. I affectionately refer to it as the middle of nowhere because it literally is the middle of nowhere. I'm happy to just about everything. And it ends up being that beading is how I deal with my anxiety. It's how I deal with being, I'm not a trucker's wife, but I might as well be. My husband's gone normally for 2 weeks at a time. He's home for 2 weeks, gone for 2 weeks. it's not an easy life, and this is how I focus my energies in a positive way. And right now I'm just starting off day 2 of a minimum 28-day stretch without him, so bear with me. Now I'll take this back here because we were just about through the list. Okay, I've got here, because Maggie was asking about size. Oh, hold this here for me. Maggie was asking about size 30 thread. Now, this is size 30 quilting thread that I got from Fabricland. And it seems to be, let's put it up against B. This is my B. It seems to be a little bit, maybe a little bit thinner. Now let's pull out my D. Oh, teenagers. I have a teenager as my camera crew, so please excuse the giggles.
I'm so thankful you have a camera crew.
Yeah.
The size 30 seems to be fairly close. Let me feel the thickness. I would say the D is fairly close to the size 30, but I use B for this.
B as in
have
boy?
B as in boy is what
Okay.
I use for pop sockets. D as in Douglas is what I use for when I'm working with size 10 or larger beads.
Okay. The Nicole,
Yes?
this thread here, the spool, this is what I buy at my beading store. And I guess it's a textile 35. So that's probably, I would say that's fairly thick. So that's probably like your D.
You know what? It ends up being, I've gone through this through my own.
I'm gonna put this stuff away.
Okay. I've gone, hey, why did you put it back on me? I don't want to see me.
That's okay.
It's been through trial and error, because like I was told at first, use D for everything, and then when I was having problems with beads snapping or not being able to get my needle through and going through thinner needles and everything else, a lot of the times I like using a size 11 needle because I like the feel of the strength of it, and it's still a fairly thin needle, but to me.
And you're also using a shorts, correct?
Yes. The only
Okay.
time I ever use a long needle is when I'm adding a fringe with like a 1-inch bugle bead that obviously your sharps can't go through. Now let's see here. We were almost through the list here. Okay. The last of the odd items is this here. It's a JP Coates beading thread, and that. Now I use this in edgings instead of using a doubled thread, because if you look at it closely, let's see. Oh, good, it went into focus. Good. Wow. Camera. It is actually applied thread. It's not a monofilament like our regular nylon. And so I find it's got a really, really good strength on it. I can tug and I can pull. I also use it for warp threads when I'm looming, but it is fairly thick, so obviously isn't that practical for the regular beading. But I absolutely love it for my edgings because it just, to me, it's nice and tough. I don't have to double it. It doesn't fray. And then the other things I use, my ruler, my scissors, and my pencil. Okay, now I need you to go over here. Well,
like what?
Well, just kind of stay there. I'm gonna put a spot on here. Now, I'm going on the basis that you've never beaded before when I show this. So you start off with your piece of Pellon, and then I divide it into little sections, And I also like to have my little center marks. It also comes in handy for centering my cabochons, as well as sometimes I use that as a grid mark for when I'm doing other beading. And it's really, really easy. All you do is you just take your leans, your cab. You hope that you don't bop yourself in the nose when you're taking the lid off your glue. Not that I've ever done that. The one thing I did learn is that I do go all the way to the edges with the glue. Otherwise, your cab will end up popping when you're working with it. And then I use the little grid lines that I've marked to kind of plop them in place, press them down, and then I will either take another piece of Pellon or a bead mat and some weight, and then I let that dry overnight. Once they've dried overnight, okay, let's find this guy here. And we have, oh, that's sinew on that one. I don't want to use that. Melissa, if you quickly show my mess of needles, like I tend to stick needles just into stuff. Okay. Now, so then you end up with this. I use my pencil to mark off some lines. Now this guy here, he is going to become a turtle. So I kind of mark off here my little quadrants, and these marks would have already been on there. And then I need my quarter marks. I lightly pencil because you can, most of the time, unless you're using really, 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 really pale clear beads, you can't see it. I don't like using a Sharpie.
Yeah.
And then I've got,
So you just mark it and just enough to see where it is. Some people I see use Sharpies.
yeah, and for me, it's the personal preference. Now all I do is just take the end of my thread and I will knot it a couple of times just so I can have a really, really good knot. Doo-dee-doo. We have a nice big fat knot there. Good. And then I just, by habit, I usually start somewhere around the bottom. But I just pop my needle up through the bottom, and I just leave that at as is. I pick up 4 beads, run them down. I do it not snugger than you would if you do 2 needle, but not so much that they bunch up. But there's my 4 beads in. And then come up. And then see, here's where I go through the second bead. I go through 2 beads.
Can you hold that up closer? What do you mean by going through 2 beads?
Oh, sorry, here. Okay. I went through 2.
Oh,
Through 2.
I see.
Okay, hold on here. I'm going to grab another 4 beads, and then my daughter can focus on me while I'm...
That's not very good at focusing.
Well, let's get this light turned a
No,
little bit better.
You're getting there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. You take the 4 and snug it around.
I don't have it too snug because I find if it's too snug, they do bunch up. But I don't want it I don't want to have like that extra like half space of bead. If you're familiar with two needle beading, usually leave about half of a bead space. I don't do that. But you also don't want it bunched up too much because they will bunch up and then you have to go back and tack them down. And then I just kind of poke around till I get to roughly where the middle of the 2 is.
Okay.
And come back up. And then, actually the angle you're at, Melissa, right now of that is perfect for me because I can see too. And I just go through the 2. And then I go all the way around. If my round doesn't look perfect enough in my eyes, I will go back through, like the same way how I went through 2 at a time. What I will do is I will kick it over by 1. I will go through 4, back through 2, but that way it ends up being that there's between 2 and 4 threads through each one, and that's part of the reason why I use the bead. And once the round is done, it ends up looking like, oops, I'm trying to get the extra needles and thread off of him. He's got friends attached to him, and once they're done, then it ends up being like that. And then you just keep on adding rounds and
Oh, that's pretty.
And then if you want to add a pattern or whatever, I had requests for turtles, so I have these guys divided up quite a bit. And that, where is, oh, here we go. Now this is, okay, so then we need this here. So then you keep on going round and round and round and round until you go like this. I like always adding a round of banding. Sometimes I'll add a row of beads after, sometimes I won't. Then I cut the pell on to about 3/16 of an inch. If you work in millimeters, I would say this is about 5 millimeters. Again, I use the A-leans, and then I glue it to my vinyl. This isn't a necessary step, it's just a step I like to do. I like to have the whole backing stuck. And then again, I let it sit overnight, and then I just, there's my orange scissors. And then
how do you attach the banding?
When I'm attaching banding, okay, let me find, ooh, this is nice and bright. This will be easy to see. And where did my little round dude go?
Oh, I hit my elbow.
Okay.
Oh God, that's not fun.
When I'm attaching banding, what I will do is, okay, where's my needle here? Oh great, that needle's stuck. Okay. Well, I'll just use my plain old needle here. I like to start in one certain place. Like, I'll just find a place to start. For me, I always end up choosing the bottom. That should be trimmed off. Okay, so let's grab this side here since it should be trimmed off. Now I bring my needle up. Can you get close there? Actually, Melissa, stands that way you can be over top. So that way the light's good. Okay. I have my needle come up very close to the beads. And then I start. Pull my needle through. Go down through the middle. And then I do it again. And then I come up to the next, I go to the next spot, close to my beads, and through the middle, go all the way around until I get to the end. And then once I get to the end, I will trim it. The other end will also get the 2 stitches at the beginning and end. And then I will go around the outside of my banding, where I do the 2. I start on the outside. I start on the outside and then do the 2 for the last rhinestone and the first rhinestone. I will do the 2 stitches and all the way around. I don't have anything banded that isn't glued. Fudge.
Okay, so the rhinestone banding then has spaces between the rhinestones where you stitch it then.
Yes, this kind does, the plastic kind. For my pop sockets, can you get in there close enough to be able to? We're gonna try and focus so we can see in it.
Yeah. Okay.
I do have some of the metal banding, but it has been my experience with metal banding that quite frequently the claws that hold onto those rhinestones, it does not hold up. I've used them on earrings once. But anything like a medallion or a pop socket or anything else, my husband put it onto a medallion once, and he had problems with the claws letting go even before he finished the edging. So while this, some people think it looks cheaper, at least it doesn't fall apart. And it comes in such pretty colors. Okay.
Oh, my back.
So that's how that does. And then just gotta quickly trim this dude. I give it just a little bit of a margin. I don't go all the way up to where I've stitched,
That's all there are,
because
just the three of us.
because I'm always afraid that I'm going to end up hitting one of the threads. And so that's another thing too, is with my knots on the back, because I've glued the backing on, I don't have to worry about my knots or anything, because it's all been glued in. It fixes all kinds of stuff. And I try to do it neat, but I don't try to go for perfection. There we go. Okay, get out of my way, needle. I'm gonna grab myself another one here. Yeah, well, I don't have enough needles out. I have to get another one. It's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Because I have the two different colors of plied beading thread. I try to match the thread either to the beads I'm going to use or to my backing, and I prefer the backing simply because on earrings you can, with the way I edge them, you can still see the thread. On the pop sockets I try not to. Now this guy here, he's got a dark one. I just go and use a roughly about a yard, not quite an arm's length, because I'm just going around it once. Oh, and my size 15s are trying to run all over the place. Slippery little buggers. And again, we knot the thread.
It keeps focusing on your hand.
That's because my hand's closer.
There we go.
It's a lovely job. You're doing a great job, and it's
Thank
a very
you.
lovely setup. We have another participant coming in, and he's going to be telling us about the eagle feather in a little bit. But let's welcome him in. And 1 moment.
Yeah, well, I'm 99% done here. Well, no, not 99. Let's say 95.
Oh, okay. Let me explain. We have 2 new people coming in.
Yeah.
And we're just finishing the pop socket with Nicole. So welcome new people here. We're going to finish with Nicole, and then we're going to welcome you and speak to our new guest as well.
Okay.
So Nicole up here is finishing the pop socket. She had several different sections from start to finish with all her materials, and we do videotape the show. So once the show is over, you can watch it again and refer to all the parts. And right now she is teaching us about beading around the edge of the pop socket. So welcome everybody, and we're going back to Nicole.
Yeah, well, I took advantage of the time to quickly scoop out my beads. I like using 2 color edgings. Now, in starting off my thread, I will find some sort of spot where the glue hasn't completely taken, and I take advantage of that because that's how I will bury my knot. So I just bring my needle up through the backing only, and there's my knot, and I can tuck my thread back in there.
Well, that's cool. I didn't know that.
It's just something I did because I don't like hiding knots. When I'm doing earrings, I do a 3 bead edge, and so you'll be able to see the thread on the back. With pop sockets, I do a 4 bead edge, so you can't really see too much of the thread. But the trick to my edging is that you change it. So I start off here blue, red, blue, red. Now I go over roughly a bead's width, because my needle goes through straight.
Oh,
And
your
I let my
finger must be sore after that.
oh, I don't know. Can you see all the actually right now it's not too bad. When it gets really bad when I'm working on the grad caps, because it digs right in. But after
Kinda like
years of
being a hat.
quilting and everything else, and of course because I got everyone watching, my thread decides to tangle on me. But with the 4 beads, it goes all the way around and nicely covers the edge. So I did blue first, so now I do red, blue, red, blue. And then again, over roughly a bead space.
So those are size 11 seed beads that you're using for the trim?
Yep.
Cool.
As much as I love my size 10s, I like the 11s. Just seem to be a lot more consistent in size. So, and I continue on going, and it's a little bit difficult to see with the forge, but you can see how a stripe, it ends up being that even though I'm working this way, the stripes go this way in the edging. Now, the last step is once you get to the end and all that, what I turn around and do is, instead of just tying a knot right away, I will go back. You know, my last needle will end up coming up here right where I started.
Ooh,
I
that
will
is
end up
really nice.
I will end up following through for a few, two, three times, and then either 1 or 2 beads in, depending whether I'm using a 3 bead or a 4 bead edging. I will make my knot using the beads, like through the threads underneath the beads. I will knot around it and then continue on with following the thread trail. It comes up through the back, and then I trim my thread closely with my scissors, being careful not to get the other previous thread. And then the last step for that's where I use my fray check, that knot that I made, and that's wherever it is in here hidden, because the knot itself is hidden. All you'd see is just a little lump of thread. That's where I drop my fray check, and I will coat it all, because this is clear. I haven't had any problems with any of my beads. I've had problems with nail polish on some beads, but I've never had problems with my fray check.
So does the fray check sink down in and it's not visible on top?
It's not visible on top, but all I'm trying to do really is just trying to glue that knot. So that way, because this plied thread is quite slippery, I'm always paranoid that even though I've woven it back through and everything else, I'm afraid that knot's going to come out. So I use the fray check to lock it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so once you have that, then you have your finished beaded pop socket, or beaded pop socket top. You take your pop socket, take your nail file, scratch it a little bit, gouge it. Like, you have to make sure that you actually get proper gouges into it, and that even if you have to turn around and use like a serrated steak knife or something, because you don't want just light scratches. You want actual gouges in this top. You want it to actually be able to almost feel like this is Yeah, because that's not even close to being ready. You want to actually feel like this is rough, like a file would be. You take your E6000. I put it all the way around.
Can we back up a moment? Why are we roughing it up?
The pop socket itself is fairly smooth. The vinyl is fairly smooth. Even if you're just using straight Pellon, this is very smooth. The glue doesn't have any place to really grip onto.
Okay.
Right.
So
I see.
and because you're not going to see this at all, it doesn't matter how much you go in and you beat it up. And actually, the more you beat it up, the better it will glue. I will spread the E6000 over the entire thing, and then I just stick it to the bottom of my pop socket, close it up, and then I'll use a bead mat, and then I will get something with weight on it. I will leave it with the weight on it overnight, and then I always wait a minimum of 24 and prefer 48 hours before I ship it out to a customer.
Sweet. Hey, can you zoom back in on that Baby Yoda? Oh
Wow.
yeah.
Everybody loves Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
Didn't Baby Yoda just pop up onto the internet overnight? But well, let's let her finish. But yeah, Baby
No,
Yoda.
I only know about the Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pair of earrings in progress for a customer. You missed it earlier. This here is my general chaos of my active beading table.
It's a beautiful chaos there.
Same as my house.
And like I said at the beginning, this right here is the most important part. Let me get his little
The stone.
hanger. Well, it ends up being, I've got earrings hanging off of him. My Inukshuk, I almost always have an Inukshuk either on me or around me. They're very special to me. I spent part of my youth in the North, but for me, they're a guide. They tell me that I'm on the right path. I'm going in the right direction, and I've always got them around.
Cool.
So does anybody have any questions?
Do you need me anymore?
You can go, Melissa.
No, that was beautiful. Beautiful
Thank you.
job.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question for everybody. I was wondering I have a friend that does flat peyote